sometimes they get overwhelmed in these states and they suspend the licensing laws and they let any contractors come in and do this kind of work. Then it becomes the responsibility of the homeowner, the business owner, to make sure these people are trained, to your point. Who are you trained by? Look, then go Google them, make sure it's a reputable organization, because anybody with a pickup truck and a bucket doesn't become a cleaner and a remediator overnight. There's training, there's experience, there's working, kind of in a learning process that you must go through to know how to handle this stuff and safely.
And that's what's so critical, Lance. Drying a building is based on scientific principles. There's so many different surfaces, substances, materials in that building that you have to use science to dry them properly and safely so that people can go back and live in them safely and healthy and be healthy. Mold remediation is based on scientific principles. Again, so as you correctly said, we have seen in the past relaxation of the licensing requirements because there's a need for a surge. That's not good for the industry. That's not good for science. It's not good for what we do. And it doesn't guarantee that what you're doing works, doesn't guarantee it's effective, and it doesn't guarantee that that building is safe for when the people start using it again. And that's our job. Our job is to guarantee safety. And so that's why, you go through the certification programs, you go through the training, you go through continuous education to ensure that what you do works and creates a safe indoor space. It worries me. It really worries me when I see relaxation of anything in the middle of a disaster for a matter of convenience, and that then leads to problems.
Well, absolutely. And part of that problem is when a government entity issues an executive order or a bill is put through that changes the status quo, even if it's a short-term thing, people don't normally read the full impact or read into the full impact of what the bill says. I know with Texas, there was an issue where they suspended licensing laws. I think it was in the Houston area last time because of the massive flooding. They had like 40 inches of rain or something like that. But part of the executive order that was put out said that before the project could be finished, even if you weren't licensed to do the job, a licensed assessor had to clear it and guarantee there'd be no mold. But people weren't reading that far into it. They just said, oh, we don't need a license, let's go do the work. And people were getting in trouble with that.
Yeah, and I think what you've highlighted, though, Lance, is critical. That the list that Normie holds is important. The list that ISSA have of our members, we know what training they've done. We know what they do. We know their capabilities. So it's really important that right now we work together to help our members be part of the team, be part of the disaster response and recovery teams. I think that's, for me, having been in the emergency management, disaster response industry for a number of years now, that's the biggest opportunity before the hurricanes hit right now, is if you're not part of it, then become part of it. If you need help in becoming part of it, reach out to us.
Absolutely, call us. We're here to help. Whether you're more focused on the cleaning side or on the remediation or assessment side, and truthfully, they complement each other. So it's not really different sides; it's just different pieces of the same, solution. And I think the word you used before, team, really sums it up.
Yeah, and again, there's so many of our members that have got themselves organised. They're good case studies for us to look at. They're good examples for us to spread the word that this is how certain companies within our industry have got themselves organised to be part of that team, that disaster emergency management response team. But again, what I'm seeing, Lance, in the real world, there's so many more gaps and so many more opportunities to fill.
Absolutely. Well, I know we had started off talking earlier about, the alligators or crocodiles snapping at our heels here. We got so much going on. So I'm going to really thank you for taking your time out of what you've been doing to do this interview. There's a lot of information here that people need to hear over and over. Not you hear it once and I'm good for 10 years. You need to stay on top of this, hear things over, and 2 years from now, oh, that's right, I do remember hearing that. And that's the whole reason for training and for being prepared and staging and working as a team, because somebody else may remember what you forgot.
No, you're
So
absolutely right, Lance. And if they're, a company, an organization, if someone has had success in being part of that emergency management team in the response to disasters, share that information with us. We'd be more than happy to tell that story to others and spread the word.
absolutely, absolutely. Gavin, I appreciate the time and thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Lance. That was fun. Have a good day.
You too.
Good afternoon, or morning, I guess. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, so I'm sure that Mo told you when we created Normie in 2004, one of the interesting things was what we created it primarily for the Louisiana licensing law. And the Louisiana licensing law was the first law to go into effect for mold remediators in the country. So it was the first licensing law, and then what happened in 2005? Katrina. And so we were right there able to help, I think, a lot of people with some of the issues that were of a concern to us. I'm not sure if he talked about the difference between the IICRC and us, but they come from the business more from we're not competitors, by the way. As you know, if you're an IICRC person, you get continuing education credits off of this class. So we work together. We just look at the industry differently. They come from the water restoration side of the business. We come from the building side of the business. And one of the reasons why we do that is not just my background with my licensing, but the main reason we do that is because we try to look at the house and the problem that they're experiencing in terms of a mold issue as a holistic kind of problem, not just fix this problem and everything is great, but think in terms of how we can actually improve their indoor air quality. So when I was moved to New Orleans in 2002, I was actually doing some of the things that you guys are doing now and some of the things that we would recommend that you do in terms of ongoing IAQ management, which is what we call our sanitization protocol. How you create an environment in which mold won't grow. And that was really based on my book, Mold-Free Construction, which you have access to if you have the Normie app. We do have an audio version there, so you can just listen to it. Might put you to sleep, but you can listen to it if you like, because it's on iTunes and on Audible as an audio book. But the sanitization protocol really does improve people's indoor environments, so you have the ability to do that. And I just want to tell you about somebody that I met when I was in New Orleans. I was doing some trade shows, and a radio program, and I got a call from a lady. Her name was Laura DeRocher, and she had 4 children. And her youngest child, who was 8, had some very severe sinus issues. In fact, as she was talking to me, she had, of all 4 of her children, the other 3 had constantly been to the allergist every month. Now think about that for a second. Every month, for years, they had been to this allergy doctor. And she had found some mold up in the kitchen area over one of the cabinets, and she was concerned about how that might be affecting their kids, because she heard me on the radio and she knew that mold was an indoor air quality problem. She'd never really thought about that before. It's mold, how could it affect my children's health? But she was putting 2 and 2 together. She was saying, maybe there is a problem here with this mold that I'm seeing. So I went out there and I did the assessment. It took the sanitization protocol. It was not the amount of mold or the type of mold, or there wasn't a moisture problem that actually was causing the mold. It was actually a HVAC problem with the relative humidity. So we did the sanitization protocol, put it in place just like you see it today, exactly the same protocol. And she was really excited because in about a week she was feeling better. Her kids seemed to be feeling better. She wasn't sure. But the interesting thing that she told me when I was there visiting her was that her little child, the one that was just a few months old, they had scheduled that baby for surgery, sinus surgery. And she said, we've decided to kind of put it off because things seem to be going better. We'll see how this goes. Well, interesting story to kind of shorten everything up. About a year and a half later, maybe 2 years later, I got a call from her and she said, I got to tell you an interesting story. She said, first of all, I got a phone call from my pediatric physician, the allergist. He was concerned that we had switched doctors because I haven't taken my kids to the allergist in almost a year. We decided not to do surgery for the baby, and the baby is doing great. Now, a couple of years old, doesn't seem to have any allergies to the environment and what's going on. She said, I think you really solved a bigger problem than you maybe think you solved. The reason I'm telling you that story is because we hear that story over and over and over and over again. Maybe not quite as dramatic, but we hear that story over and over and over again. You are in a very, very important industry. You may not realize it, but one of the reasons why it's regulated is because you're dealing with people's health. The health of your employees, the health of your clients. That's what you're dealing with. And rather than thinking about just being a mold assessor or just being a mold remediator, as Mo's probably told you, we want you to think in terms of being an indoor air quality professional, because that's really what you're doing. I'm sure Mo told you already that when you start cleaning up mold problems in an environment, it's almost like a surrogate of other things that are going on in the environment. If you're reducing the mold, you're also reducing some of the other contaminants, the bacteria, the viruses, the particulates, some of the other stuff that's going on in the environment. So you can make a gigantic change to the environment. So our goal is for you to really think in terms of becoming an indoor air quality professional. And this is really the first step. If you haven't thought about that before, this is really the first step in that direction. And I'll tell you the other thing it'll do for you. I've been in business a very long time. I used to tell people I was self-unemployed in the construction industry. Been in business a really long time. And what you want is you want to edge in the market that makes you different from everybody else. And it's not about price, let me tell you.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Balzano, publisher of R&R and The Experience Events. Welcome to Trade Talks, Unlocking the Experience. Today, this is episode 13, lucky 13. We have a guest today who's no stranger to the experience. He's been a leader at this event in our industry for a long time. He's a husband, he's a father, a leader, he's a marketer, a cleaning expert, a salesman, a spokesman, an avid photographer, a bear and wildlife aficionado. We'll talk about that in a little bit for sure. Okay. He is a proud Colorado Buffalo. He is a veteran of the experience. And he's the vice president of marketing of HydroMaster. Of course, it's Mr. Doyle Bloss. Welcome, Doyle.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that introduction. I looked at some of the previous people that you guys signed up for this series of podcasts, and it's fun because they're a lot of fun people. But I also feel honored just to be mentioned in the same sentence as some of these folks, because they've all given a lot for the industry and to help build a unique experience as it goes, a unique opportunity for the entire industry to come together at an event. And it's exciting to be a part of that, because there was a time when the industry couldn't get together nationally. It just wasn't possible. There were too many organizations in too many places. So we'll talk more about that later. Yes, I am a proud Colorado Buffalo.
Yes, indeed.
And for those of you who don't like Coach Prime, I just have this to tell you. I indoctrinated both my sons into the Colorado Buffaloes. Neither one of them ended up going to school there, but they both live and bleed the Colorado Buffaloes like I do. And they're both in their 20s and they've never seen anything. We've been lousy their entire lives. So we're hopeful Coach Prime gets us where we want to go. So we're excited about that. And yeah, I am a Colorado native, went to school at the University of Colorado, and my heart's in Colorado. But if you haven't looked there lately, the prices are in Colorado are about equal to the West Coast. So it's not a cheap place to live anymore.
No, that's a lot. And actually, that first answer was wonderful, Doyle, because I was going to say, thank you for saying the nice things about this podcast. The real secret is, yeah, they're great people I've been having on, but this is my first time doing this. So I'm looking at my favorite personalities in the industry. So I could just sit here and smile and let you do all the work. And it's working so far.
Good.
We almost moved to Colorado. Actually, we're down in Naples, Florida now. About 10 years ago, we realized we didn't have to sit through the crappy Ohio winters anymore. And because the snow there is, you know it. You get a foot of snow in an hour, and then it's sunny for 3 days, and it's just beautiful. We have another event we run there. I go every year. I'm really flattered. Just love being there with the clear air.
Yeah, and you know, people make fun, people keep asking me, why did you move to a little town in Kansas? And last week I was back in Everett at Hydromaster with our sales team and our production team, and we were having a bunch of meetings. And it took me about 10 minutes in the rental car on I-5 to remember why I like living in a small town in Kansas. So
Yeah.
the lack of we have one red light in our town, and it starts flashing yellow at 6 p.m. every night. So that's the kind of traffic I have to put up with.
Oh, that's nice. That's I'm very jealous actually. That is nice, especially as we're not 25 anymore and we roll along. It's
Exactly.
calm us
Yeah.
down.
Yeah,
Now
when
as most people know, or for the two people who don't know, you've been in the industry forever, and actually your family has been in the industry forever. Tell me a little bit about how Ralph got started. Your dad and he's founded Steamway at age 60. Is that correct?
Well, he bought Steamway at age 60. He
I-
actually worked for the company for years before that. We lived in Illinois, and that's why I still root for the Cubbies. But
Yeah.
we moved from Illinois back to Colorado. We couldn't wait to get back to Colorado, and he went to work for a gentleman named Clark Seedloom, who had started. Clark was one of the original pioneers in the industry. And when I throw out some of these names, the people under 40 are going to roll their eyes and go, "Who's that?" But if I have written a lot of history stuff about the industry, because I do think we owe a lot to those original pioneers in the industry that started companies. And I'll tell you a little story about that, because I actually started. My dad went to work for Steamway, so when I was a teenager, I got an old Steamway portable. Those of you who've been around a long time remember the old Steamway 400. Portable is kind of an oxymoron. They weighed 168 pounds. But I was 15 years old, and a friend of mine and I decided we were going to start cleaning carpets. And my mother drove us to our first jobs in a cherry red 1972 Ford station wagon.
Yep.
But we discovered real quick that there was a lot more money in cleaning carpets than there was in flipping burgers at McDonald's or whatever else teenagers did in those days. So we started a carpet cleaning business, and you know, I've heard a lot of the great stories about, you know, how people originally got in the industry, but one of the ones that I like to tell is I've been cleaning carpets for about a year, and we got a job to clean my dentist's office, and it was a 3-story building. So my friend and I that were running a carpet cleaning business, we figured if we could clean the carpets in a 3-story building, we could probably retire after that. I mean, this job, the numbers were so big, and you know, it's probably a $2,000 job, but we thought this was it. And so we started cleaning the carpet. And of course, it's in the middle of the night when they're closed. And about 2 hours after we started, we were so proud of the route, the how fast we were going and how clean, how good the carpet looked. But we looked back over the carpet, and there weren't ripples in the carpet. There were waves. And I'm talking about knee-high waves in the
Right.
carpet. And back then, there wasn't ICRC schools. There certainly wasn't the internet. There wasn't people you could call to learn, you know, what's happening and what should you do. The only person that I knew that I could call for help was my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, my dad had a reputation of being this very kind soul. I have to tell you, he wasn't very kind that night, because I couldn't get him to quit laughing, because I really thought my life was over. I envisioned that I was going to be indebted to the owner of this building for the rest of my life, trying to buy them new carpet. And finally, in between my dad's chuckles, he finally spit out, "Let it dry, it'll go back down." And he was right. Of course it did, and it looked good, and nobody but my friend and I that were cleaning it ever even knew that happened. But for a while, I really did think my life was open. And I know a lot of my friends that were back in the industry in the 70s cleaning carpets can relate to that story, because there was just a lot of stuff going on then in terms of the backings and the types of carpet fibers, and just a general lack of knowledge. A lot of it was trial and error. That's kind of what you did sometimes, is you tried it and hoped that it went well. So we enjoyed that, but I ended up going off to college. I was going to be a CPA. That was my big goal. And so I went to the University of Colorado, but but right when I graduated, my dad finally had the opportunity to buy Steamway from the original owner. And he was 60 years old at the time. So the bank asked him, you know how banks are, even to this day, they were polite about it, but they kind of said, you're getting up there in years and you could kick off at any time. So could you get somebody to co-sign this loan? So he said, well, my son just recently graduated from the University of Colorado. He's going to be a CPA. And they said, okay, we'll take him. So I ended up co-signing the loan with my dad to buy the company. And I went back off to college because I was going to get a master's degree. And my dad would call me about every 2 weeks and say, son, I love you. And I'm glad you're out there having fun. At this time I was only 3. And he said, but I'm old and senile and your name's on this loan too. I sure would appreciate it if you'd come back here and help me run this place. And by that time, my little brother had gotten involved and my mom had gotten involved. So it had already become a family business. And so I thought about it and I said, Dad, I really like it here. And he said, okay. So he would make that call about every month. And, I'm old and senile. And that's funny because he was 60 years old at the time and he worked every day he was alive until he passed away at the age of 79 at Steamway. So it wasn't like he was on the edge of losing it. He enjoyed this industry in a way that I don't think a lot of people can understand back then. And the things that he loved about the industry, I tell people that's the things I love. There's no other industry that I know of. I'm sure there are, but I don't know about it, where a husband and wife can decide to start a cleaning business and basically pull themselves up by their bootstraps, not have a lot of money. And 5 years later, they're not only making a good living for themselves, they've got 2 or 3 employees that they're making a good living for. That's why I love this business. In spite of ourselves, we can be successful at it. And the 70s and 80s proved that because there was nobody teaching anything back then. But early on, when I finally acquiesced and went to work for my dad. And, the first thing he did was sit me down at a class taught by Matt Clark, who was a business operator. And he taught business management and the Stop franchise is eventually where he ended up. And I met people like Ron Toney and Jeff Bishop and so many of the early pioneers of education in our industry. And that's caught my attention. I mean, I loved working with those guys. And so from day one in the industry, I was really involved in the educational side. And that was a big part of what Steamway did back in the day. And so it wasn't just making equipment and talking to people about truck mounts. That's another thing that I enjoy about the industry is that everything kind of stays in the same pattern. Back then, the big argument was about portables versus truck mounts. Do you really need a truck mounts? Now we talk about low moisture versus truck mounts. And obviously there's a place for everything. There is. But there's nothing like a fire breathing truck mount. There's just nothing. And people who try and explain them away just don't understand the science of cleaning. So obviously I've spent my entire life involved in the supply side of the business. In 2003, after we had sold the business, when you buy this, Mike, when you buy a family business, it's very difficult to make your own way. And one of the things that I decided to do was my brother had left for Hawaii to become a realtor. We don't even talk about him anymore. He's the black sheep of the family living in Hawaii. So seriously, he's doing great over there.
I'll bet.
Yeah, it's a tough life, but somebody's got to live there. But I just decided that it was after my father passed away and the new owner really needed to make his mark on the company. And I decided I was presented with an opportunity by the Hanks brothers to go out to work at what was known at the time as Hydroforce or Bridgepoint. Today we know it as a Ramsco. Or in Salt Lake City. And it was a big change. I mean, I've been in a family business for 20 years. And, at the time I left Steamway, I was the president of the company and I went to work for them out there and absolutely loved what what they were doing with that company. They were also involved deeply in education and training, and you know, the idea that they were building this network of distributors across the United States that could get supplies into the hands of cleaning and restoration professionals. You know, I still laugh when I read on some of the forums about people complaining, well, my nearest distributor is 3 hours away. And well, there was a time when your nearest distributor was like 5 states away. So
Yeah, move to Montana. Good luck with that. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, Montana's, and yeah, we used to give a hard time to our distributor in Montana because he was selling so many truck mounts. We were convinced that he must be getting elk and bighorn sheep to go into the cleaning business. So then I spent about 10 years at there and was presented with an opportunity to go to work with Hydromaster. And I'd always admired Hydromaster. You know, when I was working at Steamway, they were a direct competitor, but Mike Palmer and Steve Brandt and the guys who built Hydromaster were friends of mine. And I, you know, working at Bridgepoint, we were a big vendor. We were a big distributor for them, a big customer of theirs. So I went to work for Hydromasters and have been there ever since through a lot of different changes and ownerships and general managers. But one thing that's stayed true is the value of the cleaning equipment that the company manufactures, and it's been a fun ride. But like people ask me all the time, have you ever thought about leaving the industry? And sure, I mean, I've been presented with opportunities to leave the industry and go into training or public speaking and things like that. But I just love the fact that our business still represents such a great opportunity for people to grow a business and make something that is bigger than they ever imagined they could have. And that's, I think, one of the great joys about the Experience Convention is the ability of everyone to come together and celebrate what is a fantastic industry. So that's kind of like the quick history of what Doyle's been up to. And you know, I'm on the tail end. Barry Costa and I were standing at the Experience Convention a couple of years ago. And one of the things that I always loved that Barry did was recognizing people from the industry who passed away. And he kind of had an in memoriam thing with pictures and a little bit about their story. And obviously, you know, 100 words don't do the justice to the life of anyone, much less some of the pioneers in our industry. But I looked at Barry and I said, you know, the problem, these people on the in memoriam board now are not our mentors.
Yeah.
They're our peers. So that's, I think, when I first recognized, and you know, that's one of the things before I ever retire, I'm hopeful that younger leadership steps up. And I think some of them have. You know, Lisa Wagner may not consider herself to be younger than me, but she is, and she's a big part of what the Experience Convention does, and Mark Kennedy and some of those folks. And I think, you know, the leadership is evolving that will take this industry into the next century. And if you look at the amount of change that's happened just in my 40-year career, imagine what this industry is going to look like in 2060, 2070, and what it might be doing. And so it's exciting to see that. You mentioned photography. Yes. I do when I'm not working in the carpet cleaning business or in the restoration business, I do love to do wildlife photography. I try to go to Yellowstone or Grand Teton or Rocky Mountain National Park at least once a year. I love to photograph grizzly bears. I guess the best story I can tell about that was the first time that I was ever within range of the grizzly bear. It was about 75 yards away from us, and you're supposed to be 100 yards.
Right.
And but I had my 2 sons with me, and my youngest son, Josh, was about 6 or 7 at the time. And I looked at him, I said, so Josh, are you scared of this bear? And he said, no, Dad, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you.
That's right.
So
that's right.
He quickly understood what we were doing, but to see wildlife in their natural habitat and photograph them, there's just nothing that I enjoy more. It's a grand opportunity, and obviously it's changed a lot. You know, people ask me about it that are going to Yellowstone or going to Grand Teton. 30 years ago, to see a grizzly bear, it was a rare thing. You know, if you were lucky enough to see one. Now it's fairly common. The grizzly bear population is growing. Any of our friends up in Montana can tell you that because it's expanding into neighborhoods and places where they traditionally were but haven't been in 150 years. But it's just, you know, a bighorn sheep, elk, deer, if they've got antlers or horns, I like to take pictures of them. And so I spend as much time as I can doing that, and it's just for fun. My nephew is a professional photographer, and he went on several trips to Yellowstone with me. And my brother asked me to take him out there because I asked him, he knew what all this camera gear was. And we were standing in a fox den where there was a fox with 4 brand new kits that had just been born. And I asked him to add up the amount of money that was in the photography equipment. And he said about $700,000 is what he came up with, was standing there by us. And I said, just remember that photography is a great thing to go into, but it's a very competitive business. So he's actually ended up being a very successful photographer, but you know, he lives in Kauai, so he's got plenty of opportunities to take pictures of beautiful things. So that's what I like to do when I'm not doing things. I'm involved in church activities. I love to do that. My faith's a big part of my life and always has been. So I enjoy this industry and I enjoy the experience. So let's talk more about that.
Well, I want to go real quick because you said some great things. I want to ask you some quick questions about first, you know, it's the 13th one we've done. Everybody, we drift into why did you get into the 2 answers. Well, number 1, we want to help people, which is true. And what you said is that it's an easy way to start the American dream. You know, it's an easy way to start a business and get started. And I think both of those whys are wonderful and make you more excited to get involved in this, in my opinion. Because everybody has the same thoughts. You know, we're helping people out at their darkest hour and we can start a business. And anyway, also,
when you're in business for yourself and a challenge comes up,
right.
Sometimes you honestly think I must be the only person this has ever happened to. You know,
right.
There are some bizarre things that happen, but you know what? Over the years, I've learned if it happened to you, it's probably happened to somebody else, and somebody out there, maybe through trial and error, maybe through the education they got, they figured out a way to fix it.
And as you mentioned before, I mean, we have some, I've been on my soapbox all year about getting our great leaders to mentor the next generation coming up. And I always have to explain that I have an AARP card too. I'm not saying go away. I'm saying you're the stars of this industry, begging you to help these kids find the way because they're excited to come in. And I think that's great. Did you think your dad saw something in you? I mean, I know he tried to kind of trick you into signing that loan, as dads do. But do you think he saw something with this way to get you? Because you know what? I'm happy he's gonna be an accountant, but I know he could be great at this. Or
I do. I think he thought I was way too dynamic of a person and liked people too much to be a CPA.
Right.
You know, if you think about it, you know, and obviously there's lots of wonderful people who are CPAs, but it's a desk job. It's behind the scenes. It's back in that corner counting numbers and doing things. And you know, I have a friend who went on to be a very successful partner at KPMG and has a wonderful wife and daughter and is super successful. But you know, he and I grew up together. We both went to school together to be CPAs. But yeah, I do. I think my dad thought, you know, he's a people person like I am, and he needs to be out with people. I don't have any doubt about it.
You and your dad were huge and are huge parts of the experience events. And by the way, it's a good time to mention the next event is coming up April 3rd to the 5th in Chattanooga at the Chattanooga Convention Center.
That's right. And everybody has to sing "Pardon Me, Roy." Is that the Chattanooga Choo Choo?
Chattanooga Choo Choos are involved, and Sean Bission is already working on he's a train guy, as you know. He's working on some choo choo based fun.
And listen, let me tell you a couple things about Chattanooga. Number one, the train itself, where they have the Chattanooga Choo Choo, is an awesome place. It's fun, and people don't understand Chattanooga is a great place to go. I've traveled the whole world, and I think the best aquarium I've ever been to is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So if you love sea wildlife, they have just an awesome aquarium.
Perfect. What now? one of the things we know by our friends at Clean Facts event originally started the Ralph Bloss Award, the humanitarian award. What was the origin of that? I mean, obviously it's because he was such a legend in the industry.
Well,
but-
I'll tell you, it was the brainchild of a gentleman named Evan Kessler, who
Yep.
was the publisher at the time of ICS magazine, which was a BNP meeting.
and R&R. So he was
Yep,
our original
yeah,
creator of this
he was
magazine.
the editor of at the time.
Right.
And he's still very good friends with our family, and as a matter of fact, just recently announced he's retiring because of some health issues. And Evan was another pioneer in our industry, and his original boss, Howard Olansky. I've talked about both of them in my history blog that I have. But Evan went to my dad's funeral, and everybody that was from the industry knew about my dad's contributions inside the industry. But I think the thing that struck him is that there were 18 pastors at my dad's funeral, head pastors of churches.
Wow.
And one of the things that my dad did in his life was pastor to pastors. And what I mean by that, if you think about it, if the preacher of your church or your synagogue or whatever faith you might be, if the bishop, or whoever it might be that is assigned to, tender to the flock, who tenders to them? Because they're just people. And that was one of the things that my dad loved to do, was to encourage and counsel pastors. And then the other thing that I think struck Evan at the time was all the different charitable events and things that my dad was involved in that he knew nothing about. He felt like I thought I knew this guy. And the church camp that I went to when I was a kid in Colorado had just named a cabin, and because of all his contributions to that church camp. And what it really came down to is that my dad got involved anywhere, anything. He got involved, and he did something about it. And so that kind of birthed the idea that there was a lot of people in our industry that do humanitarian efforts. Some of them are well known, some of them you've never heard of. Some of their humanitarian efforts are well known, and some you don't know anything about until somebody tells you about them. One of the definitions of humanitarian is somebody who does something without recognition. And there's literally thousands of people in our industry who mentor and serve their communities in a way that most of us never know about. I read about a carpet cleaner in the United Kingdom who 2 weeks ago went to a job site where he was cleaning for a 93-year-old woman that was dying of leukemia.
Mhm.
And he just said at the end of the job, he couldn't possibly bring himself to charge that way. And that's the kind of industry, right? People who care. And
Mhm.
that's kind of what birthed that award, is that it recognizes people. Sometimes you've heard of them, and sometimes you have no idea who they are. And last year's winner, Jorge, he's one of the best human beings you could ever meet. And I didn't know Jorge, so he won the award. A lot of my friends knew him, but I didn't know him. And after meeting him, I'm like, wow, this is one impressive individual. And that's what's been the funnest thing about the award, is the people who vote on it, the people who vote on the winners. It's not political. It's not out to recognize the biggest supplier, although some of the biggest people from the biggest suppliers have won. It's voted on by the past winners.
Right.
So it's like, and now we're up, 20 something winners. So it's always an impassioned thing. They take this, the men and women on that committee take that award so seriously. You can't imagine how serious they are about it. And they take it and every year the vote is close, because we always get 2 or 3 candidates that just stand out. And it's always very close. It's not like, that one person runs away with it. There's always 2 or 3 very, very worthy recipients. And there's literally 50 or 60 people that have been nominated over the years that have never won it. And their nomination gets voted, and they may never win it, but they're just superhuman beings. They're just, the things they do for their community and the industry itself, but mainly their community on this award are just outstanding. So I really appreciate BNP Media and the experience, you know, Larry and Clean Facts carried it on, and I'm very appreciative of it because there's plenty of awards that recognize people who achieve things in our industry inside the industry. But sometimes we need to step back and go, you know, there is life outside of cleaning and restoration.
Yeah.
And recognize people who are just doggone good people. That's what it comes down to.
You know, just again, doing these 12 little interviews, I've learned everybody's got such a great, you peel the onion back. They're good people. Like what you just explained, Lisa Lavender owned an Arena Football League team. Lisa Kennedy wanted to go to school to study Russian studies when the USSR crumbled. It's like all these interesting things. And I'd imagine it's not just the 12 people I talked to, it's an industry-wide phenomenon. The Ralph Bloss Humanitarian Award is such a big deal at our event every year. And I'm so glad that we're still doing it. And what's the first time you went to the experience? Do
Well,
you
that's
remember?
a great question, Mike. The truth is that if you go back in time, before the connections and then what became the Experience Convention, there were 13 different trade associations, regional trade associations around the country that held their own events. And I feel fortunate that when I was traveling young in my career, I did get to go to a lot of those events because I've met people at MSPCA and NEIRC and SCRT and CFI and CCINW and PRCA, and I could go on with the alphabet soup, but the people that I met, just tremendous people. But the truth is that their events were local. And at the time, you know, every manufacturer, there weren't a lot, you know, the restoration industry wasn't nearly as developed then as it is now. You know, now if you have a restoration event, you've got consultants, you've got software, you've got all kinds of detection equipment, computer, you know, you name it that has an interest in our industry. Back then it was, you know, it was people who made air movers and dehumidifiers and people who made truck mounts and portables and chemicals. And that's really all there was. And so you go to these regional events and, you know, there might be 150 people there. I always tell my favorite story is my dad went to a trade show in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, if I'm going to plan a trade show, Tulsa, Oklahoma is destination that I would think of. But actually, I'm kidding it. But I love Tulsa. I live near Tulsa.
Right, I understood.
Yeah, I don't want to insult all my friends in Tulsa, but I think they would admit that nobody goes to Tulsa on vacation. But there were 54 exhibitors, and the attendance was 27. 27 people came to the show. But my dad, you know, the ever optimistic, I said, so how do you, oh, it's great. It's fantastic. We made lots of good connections. That was my father. There was never an event where we didn't meet somebody who was going to be an integral part of the future of our company. And that was his optimism. That was always the way he looked at it. But as you can tell, those events were expensive for the vendors. They weren't well attended. Generally, you were talking to people who, you know, you and I talked about this, Mike. You know, who do I want to meet at a trade show? I want to see all my friends. I want to see all my customers. But to make it financially beneficial, I need to meet some people I've never met before who are newer to the industry and they haven't been in it 25 years and you know, they've been using this brand of truck mount since the beginning and they're happy with it. I need to meet some new people. And so all you met were the same, you know, the same friends. But the bigger part of it was that because there were so many small regional events, there was never an opportunity for the industry to get together as one group. And so all the trade associations came together and Larry Cooper birthed the idea of, at the time it was called Connections. And it started, I remember I've been to every single Experience event except one since its inception. And it started out, it wasn't a great success at the beginning, but it wasn't a flop either. It went really well because the industry was clamoring for a national event. And obviously, over the years, it became immediately obvious that in spite of what some of us think of Las Vegas, that is the place to go. That's where people go.
You'll,
Um,
yeah.
But
I feel exactly the same way, by the way. Go ahead.
it's, I like to tell the story. The first time my wife went there with me, driving out of town, and she kept turning around as we were driving away from Las Vegas. And I said, honey, what are you doing? She says, I'm looking for the pillar of salt shaped as Lot's wife.
That's
Now, some of
exactly
you will
right.
get that joke, and some of you have no idea what that means. But anyway, that's Las Vegas. But it's obviously a destination. There's so much to do there. But also that there have been many other successful East Coast events. You know, you and I were talking about Clearwater Beach and
Yeah.
what a great place that was. And that outgrew the facility that the event was in. You know, I think everybody gets, why'd they ever move it from there? Because it couldn't hold it anymore.
We get too big. Yeah.
It got big. So the first events were fairly successful, but as you know, this industry is full of organizations, and I don't mean this to sound bad. It's not. They have an agenda that has to do with them, and so there were some groups that never did join the experience. Some trade associations, some franchises, obviously, that never joined the experience, but it became the go-to national event, and it really did. And I know that, you know, every year, and especially Mike, now that you're the person running the show, you're going to hear from people who are disappointed in this and disappointed in that. And what, you know, it's nothing but, you know, you'll hear complaints. But let me tell you, if you haven't been around a while, you don't have the ability to learn from history. And the industry needs a single go-to national event that everyone is welcome. Doesn't mean that they need to stop their event, but there's certainly nothing wrong with coming to this event.
Mhm.
And it needs that. And as over the last few years, as you know, that the restoration industry has taken on a life of its own, and there's a lot of events because of the importance of restoration, first response, and things like that. As some of these bigger hurricanes hit, and literally people lost their lives in their homes and all that. You know, the government got involved in everything else. But I encourage people. The experience event is the industry event. It's the go-to industry event where everyone is welcome. Anybody can attend, anybody can exhibit. Unfortunately, Mike, you even let my competitors in. I don't know why, but you do. And it's a place that you can be at. And you know, the truth is, some of the manufacturers have backed away from the trade. And you and I know why. It's very expensive. It's very expensive to put on a trade show. If people had any idea how much you had to pay for that room a day.
Yeah.
You
No, for
rent.
sure.
Yeah, and if they knew that, you know, what dryage costs and all the things that the exhibitors have to pay to get in there. But in the end, it's worth it. It's worth it because it's the industry coming together. And the truth is, you need the exhibitors, you need the new equipment or the new software or the new, you know, consultant or whatever it is. You need those because that's what attracts people to come. But the biggest part of the event is sitting there talking to each other in the 10 minutes before the speech starts. And I don't think people understand how fun it is to be amongst peers who are there to help you grow. And that's, you know, I'm here to learn. Here's what I've tried. It worked. This didn't. That's the best part of the experience is the ability to learn from your peers. And the truth is, over the years with the trade shows, I think people miss because carpet cleaning can be so competitive.
Mhm.
People think that everybody's like that. Some of my best friends work for competitors. I enjoy getting to see them and catch up with them to find out how their families do it and all that. You know, the exhibitors in this, and it hasn't always been this way, but the exhibitors in this industry are friends with each other, and they enjoy getting together. And the truth is, we'd rather talk to end users, but if we get a chance to talk to each other, that's great too, and catch up. And so the experience is the go-to industry event, and it grew out of a need for the industry to have a single go-to place that anybody was welcome at. And it's a great opportunity to learn, a great opportunity to network. And the truth is, have some fun. I mean, if you like Vegas, you'll have fun in Vegas. If you don't like Vegas, you know, listen, if I can find things to do in Vegas, anybody can. 'Cause I don't like 90% of Vegas, but there are things there that I had no idea how talented Donnie and Marie Osmond, as an example. So there you go.
You're still going strong.
That's one of the best shows I've ever been to. But,
Well, before
seriously,
I got to pull us in though. Before we go to Vegas, we got to go to Chattanooga, Tennessee.
that's right. So let's focus on Chattanooga, because the East Coast event has always been smaller.
Yeah.
And depending on where it's been in Atlanta, it's been in Florida, it was in Cincinnati a couple of years back. Depending on where it's at, the audience kind of changes. And that's nothing wrong with that. That's actually can be a good thing, because it's different people every year for you to meet. But the upcoming event in Chattanooga, you know, the lineup that you guys put together every year is just phenomenal. And I know that there's some people out there who bellyache about the influence that this organization or that company has on the event, and this speaker and that speaker. But you know, some of the smartest people I know work for my competition, and they have things that they can teach you to help your business with. So the fact that they don't work for HydroMaster doesn't mean that they don't have value. It means that they do. There's a lot of value in what they have to say. So the people that are there, and you've been interviewed, you know, the Barry Costas and the Sean Basales and Lisa Wagner's and Mark Kennedy's and on, and Chuck Viola, you've got Chuck and I think we're the first two people in the industry who actually taught somebody, you know, how to do cost analysis. And he's made a business out of it, and it just does a tremendous job. And on and on and on. There's I can't name everybody, but the show that you put together in Chattanooga is one that people would be crazy if they didn't consider going, especially if they're in the eastern half of the United States and they're not Vegas fans. That, you know, if there's a lot of people out there that aren't Vegas. If you're not a Vegas fan, then go to Chattanooga.
That's right.
Chattanooga's about as the opposite of Vegas as you can get. And we'll all go out and get grits and have a good time.
There's
So,
nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
I've always said, Larry, he didn't name this the experience by chance. He wants everybody to have fun, have an experience, have a good time. But you're right. I mean, the hands-on is what brings a lot of attendees, and those attendees are the ones who are going to buy your products. And that's the whole point of it. One final thing I want to throw out there, that you triggered something that I was thinking about in another podcast about what I learned during COVID. And I think, you know what, we can all agree on this. I dare to say, is that you got to be with people. You know, we were without
absolutely.
people for a couple of years, and bad stuff happened all over the
It
place.
did. We're still suffering from the
Yeah.
case. And
So,
I agree. 100%.
Getting to expos and coming out and seeing your friends and your competitors. And I also said, it's funny you mentioned about your competitors. I mean, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning are best friends now. That didn't mean they want to beat each other's brains in when they
Yep,
played. That's
absolutely.
okay. It's American competition. That's okay. So this is great. By the way, Doyle and HydroMaster are going to be exhibiting in Chattanooga. And please make plans to join us and attend the experience April 3rd through the 5th. You can register through our website, rnrmagonline.com. You could find this in all R&R videos and podcasts on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Please follow us if you haven't already, and feel free to leave a quick review. And also, please follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. A very special thank you to our guest, the one and only Doyle Bloss. This is Trade Talks, Unlocking the Experience. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks, Doyle.
Okay, everybody, we are back live again from the Experience Trade Show in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And we have the person now that if something goes wrong, gets blamed.
Yes, that is 100% true.
Mike Balzano from BMP Media.
Yes.
And your official title of this show is the person to blame, right?
I'm the group publisher. I'm a publisher of R&R, and I'm the person to blame at the experience. That's 100% correct.
Well, I haven't found any fault yet. So,
Knock on wood. That's good.
but it's early in the interview, so we'll see where that goes.
I wanted, before we get started, I want to say we talked at the experience in September, And it was one of my favorite interviews we've ever done. So as a tribute to that, I wore the exact same outfit. I swear to God.
You did have it cleaned first, right?
Clean. This is my black shirt. Little for you, my man.
Well, it's consistency. I appreciate that.
It's a luck thing.
Absolutely. So we're here at the Tennessee show. This is, I guess, what you would call your East Coast show or your spring show.
Yeah, yes. I think we were talking about that too. When we should change the names, if it should be spring and fall, or because everybody calls it anyway, right?
Yeah.
Spring experience, the fall experience. This year we're in Chattanooga, and the reason I know this was chosen because we wanted to take tours of the Shaw flooring plant. And that
Right.
happened Tuesday to big success. People that went there loved it. And so I'm glad we came in. Chattanooga I've never been here before. It's pretty nice.
Me either. So
Man.
it's definitely different. It's kind of like the big city that isn't.
And we are also very happy. I mean, since we're here now, you people don't know. I wish you'd come here, but we still have a day to go. You can get here tomorrow.
That's right. One more day of this show, but we have the big event coming up in the fall.
Yeah, the big event is going to be in the fall, Las Vegas, Caesars Forum. Again, we've been there for the last few years. We're going to be at Harrah's at the hotel, and we're very excited about that. The floor plan has been put up, and it's about half filled already. That's not a sales presentation. People are kind of really excited about that event, as are we.
Well, I was talking to Scott earlier.
Yep.
And from BNP Media also.
Yep.
And we were talking about the size of the show in Vegas.
Yeah.
And I made a suggestion to him because he was always looking for suggestions. Hey, anything that would help? I said, yeah,
Sure.
why don't you open up the Segway concession stand? Because the amount of walking, it's just massive, the place.
It's getting from the hotel to the Caesars Forum is a lot. We here. What's nice about this here is we're literally a 5-minute walk to our hotel rooms and back.
Yeah.
There, you really got to think, oh man, I forgot I left my card there. Do I really want to go all the way back there? Waste an hour coming back and forth.
Well, we're making fun of it, but I mean, it's got to be that big to accommodate that many people that go to the show.
Oh, that whole city is like that, isn't it? Though you hear the stories of people saying, "Oh, there it is, they're right over there," and you're walking for an hour and a half, and you're still not there yet. But they've treated us very well. What we're doing this year, for those who went last year, we kind of turned the floor plan on its side.
Mhm.
Those who went to the event, they know that there's a huge video screen coming down the escalator. That's where the short floor is going to be. The opening is going to be there this year on the side. The reason for that not only is easier to get in that way, but we can put the conference rooms a lot closer. The conference rooms were a long walk last year. Remember that?
Yes.
So they'll be a lot closer and a lot more condensed, away from those drone people.
Are they going to be
They'll be back.
the same time?
Yeah.
Because half of them were in our training rooms that we were doing.
And you know what? There's some. It was nice to see some crossover. And they learned from you, and they learned from things, and that was great.
There was a lot of crossover. I mean, we were scanning badges. It's like none of these would scan. We looked. Oh, you're here for the drone convention,
Right. But so we're friends with our partners down the street.
Well,
A little bit.
It worked out, and you know what? It does expose a whole different industry to what we do. And truthfully, a lot of people in our industry are using drones now.
Yeah.
So there's crossover in both directions.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with new technology and utilizing it. And they certainly are. And you're right. It crosses over. IAQ and what you're specializing in these days. Everybody should be talking about that.
Yeah.
And we're happy to have our little niche of it in our show. So we're happy.
Yeah, that pesky thing about breathing.
we talked about such if only you didn't have to breathe, it wouldn't be a big deal.
Right. Just so much easier, in your daily lives. So anything else expected to happen here in the next day or so? Any surprises?
No surprises. I was so happy. Lisa Lavender, Barry Costa did a wonderful job on our restoration pavilion. Also, Mr. Manis and Sean Bissiano have done a great job with the cleaning pavilion. I'm so impressed with the professionals and they've done. They kind of this was a transitional show. Everybody knows it.
Right.
I mean, and they just grabbed the wheel and took it. And I'm so happy with my team for fighting through this. And I think the people who are here are having a great time. We're excited.
Well, that's the one thing about this show that's different than all the other shows that are out there. You don't come to this show like it's a home show where you're coming here to sell stuff.
Right.
You're coming here to meet people and form relationships and alliances with other people in this industry.
Yeah. You form relationships, but more than that, it's hands-on. The hands-on things we're doing, those pavilions. Today's session, Wednesday and Friday, day 1 and day 3 are traditional agenda sessions you're used to.
Right.
Today, Thursday, it's all hands-on training. a lot of carpet and rug cleaning thing. It was just a great day of learning. And I think people know that. We all know what a traditional event is like. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's what separates us from everybody else. No one does this like we do. You come, if you want to learn, you come here.
Yeah.
You get your hands dirty and learn and figure out your craft. Coming out of Vegas last year, I guess I'm not surprised at this, but we found that 85% of the attendees of that event were from a company of less than 50 people, which is not a big surprise when you think about it, but it made me change my thinking. I'm like, holy cow, if we could probably make that 20 people or less. These are all small business owners trying to grow their business, but either by learning how to do things better or business management. And we tailored our messaging this to them. And I think it's gone okay. I think so.
And it works. I mean, this morning we saw, because we had 3 sessions this morning about building containment.
Yep.
And air scrubbing and setting up lay flat and all those different hands-on skills that a lot of people that were there never did before.
Right.
You know, a few of them, unfortunately, we said, anybody ever do this? And guy raised, a volunteer, come on down. You know, T7 raised his hand.
Well, isn't that what the old thing when you volunteer and everybody just steps back?
Steps back.
Yeah. Right.
That's kind of what happened. There were too many people though to step back. So, but it worked out. And, you know, we built containment. It was short sessions, but we were able to demonstrate all the different things we wanted to. Right. And we had people afterwards just staying there asking us questions and coming to our booths and stuff. And yeah, it's all good.
It is good. And thank you and Doug and Normie for being such great sponsors of our events. I don't know if we could do this without you. And because
you could, but not as well.
I could, but in all seriousness, we'd be missing the knowledge you bring. That's the point. And we're going to be a part of this event forever, as long as I'm a part of it.
All right. Well, I thank you for taking the time. I know you got a thousand things going on here.
No.
So,
you.
not at all. Oh, okay. So we got another hour or so
to complain for something else, but that's okay. I'm happy I have thick skin. We'll be okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure, sir.
Thanks, Lance.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you out in Vegas.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good time.
Absolutely.
Hey, everybody. This is Mike Balzano, publisher of R&R and the Experience Events. Welcome to Trade Talks, Unlocking the Experience. This is episode 14. And we have a really, really special guest this week, a gentleman I met about a year ago, and he's one of the more classy people in this industry. He's got another long intro coming because he's done a lot. He's a certified mold assessor, certified mold remediator. He's a Class A general contractor, master plumbing contractor, master roofing contractor. More importantly, he's a husband, father of 3, a multiple-time grandfather, published songwriter, which I really want to talk to him about in a little bit, speaker, a published author. Definitely proud man of God. We've learned that, a motivator, and the God is most important, obviously. But for this conversation, the most important thing is he's the executive director of Normie. Please welcome Mr. Doug Hoffman. Hi, Doug.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate this. This is going to be really enjoyable. I always enjoy talking with you, and especially talking about the experience.
Well, Normie's been a big part of the experience for a long time. You're one of our biggest sponsors, if not the. And you've been so instrumental to help me get my feet wet in this now as we're heading towards Chattanooga. So I thank you.
Well, it's mutual, I'm sure.
You know, a lot of times we start from the beginning, as people say in these. And now I noticed you've had a lot of accreditations in Florida, but you live now in Louisiana.
Yeah.
What were you born in Florida or no?
I wasn't. I was actually born in Ohio, but we moved to Florida when I was 7 years old, and so I grew up in Florida and went to college in Florida, got married in Florida, lived in Florida until about 2002, after we became empty nesters. I had actually started an indoor air quality business, and it actually kind of almost went national pretty quickly in 1995. So in 2002, we were looking for a place to move out of Florida, had considered a couple of different places, but had quite a bit of business in Louisiana. And so we decided that we would actually sell our house. We had an apartment in Louisiana and we had an apartment on the beach in Florida. And for 3 years, we traveled back and forth. 3 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 3 weeks there, 2 weeks here. And we did that for 3 years until I finally built my house in 2005 and settled here. Love it. The culture's fantastic. The food is phenomenal. Got a great church family. Easy to get in and out of in the central part of the country for travel. So that's how we got to Louisiana.
That's interesting. And yeah, I know I saw a really funny quote you quoted on one of your websites saying ironically, you're in the heart of SEC country your whole life, but you don't really care about sports. You want to do everything but that.
I know, I know. So I had somebody tell me not long ago, Mike, he said, man, you must be a wife's dream. You don't hunt, you don't fish, you don't love sports. What do you do? So,
Well, I'll tell you what you do, and I'm going to jump around a little bit, but since you mentioned that, I love the fact that you not only have you written a very famous book we'll get into later within the industry, but you're a songwriter. You've got a bunch of published songs.
yeah, yeah. In my spare time, and I mean this as humbly as I can, I just really enjoy studying the Bible and teaching the Bible. And so, since I was probably in my 20s, I serve now as a pastor of a congregation here in the Louisiana area. And I do a lot of teaching, a lot of studying. And I actually started writing songs in 1983, 84, and have some published. And so, yeah, it's kind of fun.
I've learned so much. This is the 14th episode here of this show, and every week I learn so much about this industry, man. You peel the onion back a little bit. There's so many interesting people, and Michael Pinto we had on a while back. He's an ordained minister as well, and Mrs. Lavender owned an Arena Football League team and things like that. And it's just fascinating to get to know the people outside of our industry and what they're doing. You're certainly no different.
The fun thing about this to me is, and I think when you look at the base of this, what really drives a lot of the guys in this industry, certainly the ones that I'm associated with, is their passion for helping people. And I really believe that comes from God. And I think that the interesting is that the money follows, obviously, and that's nice. You have a nice living. But the point is that think about all the people that you help every single day. And to me, that's the real pleasure of what we do.
Boy, Doug, all 13 people I've spoken to before you echoed that. And I used to ask that question. I stopped asking it because it was the same thing. I got into this industry to help people. And it's just not only beautiful, as I've said, if that's your why and to do something, you're going to be successful, period.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I think that's great.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's the fun part, isn't it? It's hearing the stories about people who are living better lives because of something that you helped them with.
Yeah, indeed. Now you started a long time ago as a contractor and business owner, about 40 years ago, right?
Yeah, I did.
We touched on that a little bit, but can you go on that journey on the business side?
Yeah, so it's funny because my dad was a plumber. He wasn't a plumbing contractor, but he was a plumber, worked every day hard, just like a normal trades guy would. And when I was 13, he said, I'm going to teach you the plumbing trade. You may never use it, but you will never go hungry. And so over the summers, I would work with him doing rough ends and setting pipe and setting fixtures. And I just learned the plumbing trade. So that's what I did when I was a kid. And then, of course, after I went to college, I thought I wanted to go into sales or something else. I did that for several years. And when my third child was born, I decided, you know what? I think I'd like to get back into the construction industry. Mm-hmm. So to my wife's chagrin, Mike, I became a plumber's helper, became a journeyman, and then got my contractor's license, and then then from there I started building homes. So got back into the construction industry. So yeah, been doing that a long time.
Well, I ran through all of your accreditations at the start, and you definitely have the entire gamut of the industry covered. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with what you did. And you said your wife's chagrin, but we talk about for a couple other people about just there's still a skilled worker shortage, and people all want to go to college, and that's fine. I did that too, but boy, there's nothing wrong with going that route, and you could do pretty well, and it's helpful. So
well, my wife's chagrin was mostly based on the fact that my salary was cut by 2/3. Plumbers helpers don't make a lot lot of money, but she got to know our mortgage company very well.
they're like that, but you stayed the course, and now everything's going great after.
Yeah, it is. And it gave me such a great foundation. We always talk about the difference between us and the IICRC. We've got a great relationship with them, of course, but they really come from the water restoration side, which is great. We need that. If somebody has a water event, they got to deal with it, dry it out, worry about the mold. We come from the building science side. And because we come from the building science side, the only people who need our solutions are people who breathe.
because now we're talking about relative humidity issues. We're talking about air infiltration issues. We're talking about a lot of things that people have issues with, regardless of whether they've ever had a water event or not. So
Yeah.
I think we do kind of fill in the gaps in some ways for the industry.
I think that's a great tagline. I've heard your friend Lance was on here a couple of weeks ago too, and we're not that important unless, of course, you breathe. And then we might be
Yeah.
kind of important to you. Hey, when
Yeah.
did you start working with Normie, by the way?
Well, actually, I created Normie in 2004. In 2003, I had gotten a call. I was living in Louisiana back and forth, but I'd gotten a call from the contractors board in Louisiana in 2003, Mr. Moreau, and he said, listen, I read your book. He said, you obviously know something about mold. We're putting a licensing law in place. Will you come work for the state and teach on the licensing law? And I said, thank you very much. No. I've been self-unemployed all of my life. So if you'll allow us to create a trade association where we can actually support these guys in the field, then we'll do it that way. So that's how we formed Normie in July of 2004, to support the Louisiana licensing law, but primarily to support the guys in the industry. And since then, every month we're doing free continuing education training for our guys.
And I do a little research on that. That was a big miss by me that you created that. That's very impressive, and I apologize. But speaking of the book was Mold-Free Construction. And what drove you to write a book about that, though?
So no offense to any builders, but what I learned when I was a builder was that a builder will do anything that you are willing to pay for. But for the most part, they're not, in most cases, a builder is not going to build the best house he can possibly build in regards to mold-free or reducing the possibility of microbial growth. And so what I did was I decided to write this book for homeowners. And so it's a step-by-step process. If you were building a house, starting from the way the house is laid out, with the foundation, the exterior, the interior, all of that, how do you build a house that would be microbial or mold-free? And of course, that doesn't mean there won't ever be any mold in it. The idea is that how do you seal it up with reducing the air infiltration issues, reducing the moisture intrusion issues, taking care of making sure that you're doing the best you can from an indoor air quality standpoint. And so it's basically a checklist type book, chapter by chapter. It leads to the end of the book, which is a checklist that they can then go to their contractor and they say, this is the house I want to build. And then when he says, okay, it's going to cost you X number of dollars, then you can make the decision as to whether you want to do it or not. But it's obviously would be building way above minimum code or minimum standards. So that was the impetus. That's what got me excited about writing the book, was being able to address homeowners, people that were interested in building a home.
And in media and content, especially, we have a term called evergreen content, which means that you could write it and it doesn't have time specific. And the fact that you reread the second version of this out in 2018 tells me that it holds the test of time, what you wrote in 2004, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. I think the first draft I did in interesting story there, Mike, but the first draft I did in 1998, I decided it had 13 chapters. I was going to write a chapter a week. That was my goal, was to get it done in 13 weeks. and I did. I was able to meet that goal. But then was interesting because you're right. Once I got it finished, the final version didn't really need any revisions until about 2016. I wanted to add a section on insulation because there have been so many questions about spray foam insulation and non-vented crawl spaces and so forth. So I added that chapter and then did a few other revisions. But yeah, it has stood the test of time. And the interesting thing about it to me is that it's been incredibly helpful for remediation contractors, because it's not just for somebody that's building a house. It's if I were going to put something back, pour it out, and then going to put it back, if the way it was built initially was the reason for the problem, then I certainly need to put it back in the right way and fix those problems. So a lot of remediation contractors use it as kind of a guideline for repairs as well, and room additions and those sorts of things.
That's incredible. That's great. That's great. And like I said, it stands the test of time, and people are still using it today. and I found out today is the impetus for somebody approaching you launching Normie way back when. These
Yeah.
days, I know Normie specifically for IAQ, and only because we've done, we're proud sponsors of Normie TV this year, the experiences and things like that. Boy, this is a silly question. Why is IAQ important these days? I sent that to you. I'm like, I know it sounds silly, but let's talk about it.
Well, I tell you the thing that's the most exciting thing to me about where we're headed is back in the probably 2006 or 7, when we first started talking. Of course, we put mold in the context of indoor air quality because you can use mold as a surrogate basically for other indoor air quality issues. You fix mold problems, you're fixing indoor air quality issues.
Mhm.
But what was interesting was back then in 2006 or 7, the small percentage of the population was what was considered environmentally sensitive. And yet today that population has grown to between 20 and 25%, have the potential to be environmentally sensitive. Michael probably talked about that, Pinto, a lot. So all of a sudden now people are talking about mycotoxins. And a lot of those can become airborne, biotoxins, endotoxins, a lot of those sorts of things. So I wrote an article several years ago about, it was called Look Up. And if you want to know what's on your surfaces in terms of quote unquote dust, look at the supply registers. I was in a restaurant this last week and I looked up and I said, Neva, my wife, don't look at the supply register. It was just filthy, and stuff that's in the air is dropping down, on our surfaces. We don't think about that the stuff that's on the surfaces also becomes airborne. And since so much of our nutrition comes from the air we breathe, I think it's probably one of the more important things that we can do to address our health.
I think, and we all, I think I said earlier, it's dangerous to say we can all agree on something these days because it's rarely you could say that. But after the pandemic, I think we could all agree that, we're all wiping off surfaces, and that had its importance. Really, what we learned was the problem was in the air, correct?
Yeah.
And all the problems going through the air. And Normie's done such a great job at educating people on this.
I talked to somebody the other day about this, Mike, somebody that I'm actually doing an assessment for. And it was interesting because they had never thought about this. They talk about viruses and how long they can actually stay in the air. And you remember that there was that whole discussion with COVID, how long will it actually stay in the air if you sneeze? And what wasn't considered is what about all those little submicron particles that are floating around in the air that you can't see? And what happens if you sneeze and a particle of the virus gets on that little particle that you can't see? Now it's on a surface and it's floating around. How long is that going to stay suspended in the air? So I think when you really get down into the nitty gritty of air quality, there are so many aspects of it that you can address and you can improve the environment. And that is going to have an effect in most cases on our health and the way we feel.
It's a topic that is at the forefront of, really should be the forefront of everyone, scientifically or not, in society these days, keeping everything clean, protecting the ductwork. I spent a long time with a magazine called Snips, which dealt with ductwork, and IAQ was a big deal. So I have a little head start. I don't know what you know, but I had a little head start on this. And
You do.
hey, by the way, good time to mention that we're going to be heading to Chattanooga in about just a little bit. The next experience is going to be April 3rd through the 5th at the Chattanooga Convention Center. Get your tickets. There's plenty of spaces. We have booths available, and you certainly can come even the last minute to attend. We have a great agenda. I'm really proud of the agenda, led by you, sir, and Lance and Mr. Pinto and everything. We're so happy. You're gonna see, I think about 5 or 6 sessions from various people in Normie. Hands-on.
Yeah, and we've got a one day that's virtually the whole day is hands-on session. We're going to build some containment, do some negative pressure, talk about air washing. A lot of guys don't talk about air washing. They don't really understand how that works. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about utilizing our PRV 24K, which is a sanitization equipment that can be used during the air scrubbing process. So it's a fun time to be able to talk about a lot and demo a lot of different new ideas.
How long have you been? I know you've worked with Larry for a long time as well. When was the first experience you attended? Do you remember or no?
I do remember. In fact, I was invited to attend by Larry because he was actually forced, he says, to invite me. he didn't know who I was.
Mm, okay.
And so anyway, I was invited to the Atlanta show in the spring, and I went to the Atlanta show, and we sat down and started talking, and we really hit it off. It was like he understood where we were coming from, that we were coming from a different side of the industry. He was very familiar with the ICRC, but didn't know us. And really, from that point on, we just kind of became friends. And so that's how that relationship started.
Yeah, and you've been a big part of it ever since. Any good, that'd be funny. Any good stories you remember from your time at the experience, things that happened, experiences?
Well,
say?
well, they're all unique.
Yeah.
Every time it's unique. I think one of the things that I've said over and over again to our team with our members, and like I said, we meet with them every week or every other week now with our continuing education training, and we tell them, if you're going to go to one conference, industry conference, this is the one you need to go to. And the reason you need to go to is because we have fun there, but more importantly, you actually do get to experience what it's like to hold the equipment, what it's like to actually use the equipment, get to know people that you really need to know in the industry. I think the networking side of this is huge. And I'll tell you, one of the things that's been exciting to me is that I think we were able to bring to the table, and I don't want to take full credit for this, but as you know, the mold industry is split into two professions, into the remediation side, which is the trade side of it, and the assessment side, which has traditionally been the industrial hygienist side of it. And now, of course, there's whole licensing for the certified mold assessor. So you've got the assessment side and the remediation side. And I think we were able to at least be instrumental in bringing the assessment side to the experience. And that I think it fills a gap in the industry, because even remediators and restoration contractors need to know how to do assessments. And so that's one of the things that I think we're going to be able to talk a lot about at the experience coming up in Chattanooga.
No, that's great. And as I said before, you're going to be on stage a lot, and I'm very proud of that, because we need to make sure we keep this going. One thing that was hammered into my head as we made the transition to BNP Media owning these events was hands-on. And to your point, fun, family, but hands-on especially. This event in spring is different from the fall, because in the fall, it's a traditional 3 days of agenda that you go to most conferences you attend or expos. The middle day here is all going to be extra hands-on. We have the restoration pavilion, the cleaning pavilion, and a whole day of hands-on. So get down there, and we're very proud of, like I said, we're very proud of the agenda, and you're going to learn something if you come to our event. You're going to have some fun. What in your opinion, outside of the hands-on, why should people make their way to Chattanooga?
Well, I think the thing that I really think is probably the most valuable thing is just the face-to-face contact. You know, we live in a text world and an email world, and I just, frankly, I know I'm going to sound really old, but I just don't think there's anything like an eye-to-eye, shake the hands, talk to the guy. Typically, any kind of strategic alliances we set up, I will absolutely not do that unless I've actually met the person, had dinner with the person, you know, and I think that's the thing to me that is the biggest draw to an event like this. And in Chattanooga, it's so easy to get to. I mean, it's a great location because I mean, I don't know the way the population sets in the country, but I know for us, it's incredibly easy to get to. And to me, that is probably one of the biggest benefits, Mike, is being able to sit down eye to eye and talk to the people that you want to do business with.
No, I've told sales reps who I've been managing for many years that, you know what, nothing bad ever comes from making a client call and seeing your client face to face. They may not sign a contract that day or do business, but you've furthered the relationship, and that's so important. And that's just on a sales standpoint, but what you said is even more important in life. Just you need to I hate to keep mentioning that darn pandemic, but I mean, I think we learned that too. I mean, we gotta be safe. I can understand. I'm not saying don't be safe, but
right.
Being alone for too long isn't good for anybody. We need to be together. That's where not just the experience, that's where all conferences and expos come in handy.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's so convenient and easy to get to and affordable. You guys have made this thing very affordable.
It really, it's not so bad. We have a lot of good things coming up. We're doing these Shaw tours. For those who don't know, 75 people are going to get to tour Shaw plant on April 2nd. the day before. There's still just some tickets available. So definitely go to rnrmagonline.com and sign up for that. Sign up for the show, then sign up for that. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And again, I can't say enough how happy we are to be partners with you and Lance and Michael, Dr. Michael and Normie.
Well, I thank you for the effort you guys put in this. I know there's a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes. There's a lot that we see, but I know there's a whole lot we don't see. And I just appreciate you guys continuing the tradition because I love this show. Like I said, it is the one that we want to be involved in every year.
Excellent. Well, that's a good place to stop, I would say. So please make plans to attend the experience April 3rd to the 5th in lovely Chattanooga, Tennessee. You can register through our website, rnrmagonline.com. You can find this and all R&R videos and podcasts on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Please follow us if you haven't already, and feel free to leave a quick review. We'd love to hear from you. And also, please follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. A very special guest to our very special thank you, excuse me, to our guest today, Mr. Doug Hoffman. This is Trade Talks, Unlocking the Experience. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next week.
So I'm talking today with Chad Adams from Pure Maintenance, and I want to welcome you to this interview that we're doing here right now and ask you just briefly if you could tell us where you are located. You know, I'm not quite sure. I've talked to people all over the country from our NCRSI class, and I don't remember where you're from.
Yeah, actually, Birmingham, Alabama.
What's the name of the company there?
Pure Maintenance of Alabama.
Okay. That's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure. So the reason we're talking is you recently went through our NCRSI class, correct? The Normie certified class for sensitized individuals, for remediators, actually, for sensitized individuals.
Yes, sir.
And we're kind of looking for your take on it. You know, has it influenced you in any way, like where it's kind of changed your business model since you've had that class?
Yeah, well, so we have added some things that we didn't have before, tightening up on our standards and our care practices, and really transferring ownership of those standards of care from what we believe to be true to actually what the governing agency believes to be true, in this case, Normie.
Oh, okay. Well, have you dealt with sensitized individuals prior to this class?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, completely different set of rules, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not traditional remediation anymore.
So if you could pinpoint just a few things that stand out in your mind from the class that really your takeaway that you didn't know before or that you didn't realize you had to deal with before, that would be really helpful to hear.
I think the main thing that we have tightened up on is the whole home cleaning part, using what we call in the class the HEPA pizza technique, right? So making sure that we're wiping down properly using the correct microfiber rags and everything that came in the class was kind of the piece that we probably had missing, that we've added and made some standards and procedures from.
Well, and that makes sense. A lot of people don't realize the detail that you really need to get into dealing with sensitized individuals. So I'm glad you were able to take that away from there. As far as support and resources, I know that the class is filled with that. They talk about it constantly. Michael Pinto, Doug Hoffman, about the different resources and things that are there. Did you notice any stuff that we were able to provide you weren't aware of or didn't have previously?
Well, we got a whole host of documents dumped on us that are going to be good reading going forward. So yeah, absolutely, we got supplied a lot of good things that we didn't have before. Some of them, like the Normie, the sanitization practices, I think there's like 36 of them. You know, all of those resources were great to have.
Well, at least you didn't describe it as a truck backing up with the backup alarm about to dump it on you.
It was a lot. It was a lot. It was good stuff.
We've heard people talk about that because there is so much information that even though they've been in this industry for so many years, it's a new aspect of the industry. You know, the sensitized group is very, very different than what they're used to.
That's right. That's
So
right.
who do you think should take a class like this? I mean, you've obviously gone through it, but who in the industry that you're familiar with, you know, would this help?
Well, I would say that anybody that's in the mold remediation sector will run into a sensitized individual, whether the individual knows it or not. I think almost any mold remediation job needs to be treated as a sensitized individual job. Mold in any level and any category is not good for the human body. So I would say anybody in the mold remediation sector needs to think about tightening up on their standards of care.
Have you found any training like this from any other organizations or groups?
No.
Kind of like puts us on the leading edge, you think?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, welcome to the edge.
Yeah. Thanks.
No, and you know what, you have to kind of talk about it that way because it is dealing with an extreme group that really needs more intensive handling.
Well, the clinical side has preceded the remediation side, right? So the clinical side, Dr. Shoemaker and all the protocols that have come up with that, especially some of his latest work with sensitized individuals as it relates to actinomyces and that sort of thing, have preceded us, and it's time for the remediation world to catch up.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I know you're in a group, an organization of a lot of different people. I mean, would you recommend it to them to get involved with this type of training?
Yeah. So particularly, you know, the organization that I'm with, Pure Maintenance, our primary customer is the sensitized individual. We don't chase or really focus in on water damage. Some of the guys do, but as a whole, the organization really focuses on the health aspects, not the water mitigation, bulk water intrusion type side of it.
Well, that's been kind of like the missing piece that, you know, the medical profession's been dealing with. They're treating symptoms, but not addressing the cause. We address the cause, but not the symptoms. And putting
That's
this
right.
together makes a big difference.
That's right.
So, all right. Well, it sounds like it was a thumbs up from you on that class.
Yeah, man.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll have to chat again.
All right. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you.
And hello, everybody. We are back again at the Experience Trade Show in Tennessee. And I am sitting here with Jeff Cross, who is the media director for ISSA and all of their magazine publications.
Correct, Lance. We have 3 media brands: ISSA Today magazine for our members, Cleaning and Maintenance Management for facility cleaning and building service contracting professionals, and CleanFacts for on-location floor cleaning and restoration, which is exactly what this trade show is all about.
Well, I know CleanFacts because that's something we encourage all the students and everything that go to our classes to sign up for. And I believe it's a free publication for them.
It is a free publication to qualified or industry professionals. And I do get those subscription forms from you guys. So thank you for that. It seems like there's a lot of Normie members that want to receive educational content.
Well, you know, we teach about the remediation industry as far as assessment and remediation, but the whole cleaning side is all part of it, the sanitization. So it's a natural fit.
It is. So CleanFacts is a dual publication in a way. We service those that are involved in the cleaning industry, that side of it, and the other half is restoration. So, and they both cross borders, right? A lot of cleaning companies do restoration companies do cleaning. Almost every time I talk to a restoration company, it seems like they came from a cleaning background.
You might need to keep the mic up because everybody
It's loud here.
decided to talk now.
That's okay. Pay attention to this one, everyone. This is the one.
That's absolutely everybody. Yeah. Normie Booth right here. We're good. And we got CleanFacts with us, Jeff Cross. I mean, this is it. And you know, the funny part is I do interviews of you, and then different times of year, you're interviewing me.
Yeah. I mean, we're all interesting people, Lance, right?
Is that what that is?
It is. It is. This industry is great. Everyone you talk to has a story to tell. a unique experience to share. So yeah, and that's what I like about coming to these things. I've never missed an experience event or a connections, which is what it was before. And every time I come, it's about the networking, the talking to people, seeing old friends, catching up, and doing interviews at the Normie booth. That's the highlight of my
That's
visit.
it. Yeah. Well, we've only been doing that for a few years, so I don't know what you did all the other years. You
This is
can't-
my second one. I know that,
Yes, it is.
at least.
Yeah, but you know, you mentioned about the people that come to this show. This is a different group of people that come to this show. These people they're like really passionate about this industry. And they come because they want to see the new stuff. They want to touch it and play with it. And that's what the experience is about.
True. I agree with that. And I think everyone here is special. They come for the equipment, they come for what the exhibitors have to offer. But again, to default back to one thing I value is the networking. You know, you never see someone really sitting off by themselves, bored. They're
Yes.
talking to people, they're hanging out. There's the meals, there's the dinners afterwards. So it's just a good experience, as what it's called.
And it was an appropriate name. But ISSA has a show also coming up, don't they?
We do every November. It's in Vegas the last few years. I think we're going to keep it in Vegas for a while. Everyone loves to go to Vegas. So it's a big trade show. 15, 16, 17,000 people come to it. Every year is a little bit different, but it caters to everyone in the cleaning industry. And we get people from all around the world who fly in for that. So it's a heavy lift to put that on. Informa is our partner in that, but it's the ISSA show. ISSAshow.com is the website for that. So anyone wants to come to that, you'll be definitely impressed with everything that is going on at the ISSA show.
Well, I've been to quite a few of
Yes.
them, and they are impressive. Just the size alone, the activity that goes on there. And again, it's about meeting people.
Mhm.
You know, all of these different shows, you know, whether they're really crowded or not, you only need that one person to meet to change the complexion of your business.
Exactly. I've talked to a few people at this show and at ISSA show as well. And I asked them what makes it worth coming to a trade show as an exhibitor. And they find that they're going to talk, they're going to have quality conversations. They're going to land some clients. They're not going to have all those touch points they might have with phone call marketing. They're going to talk to them. They're going to have business made right there. And that's the value. So you might not land a whole bunch of clients. Maybe you will, but you're going to get some really good ones that matter.
You know, I found from all the years that I've been going to these types of shows, the people that almost look a little disappointed are the ones that take a booth and think it's a home show. They're here to sell their wares. And that's, I mean, people will buy stuff here, but that's not really the purpose of these shows.
No, it's about networking and making those connections. Yeah, if you stand back in your booth and you have stuff sitting out there, I mean, there's value to that, but you need to engage and have those conversations. Bring them into your booth, have them sit down, have those conversations that lead to the business that you want. Doesn't happen right there. You know, you've made that connection. There's a follow-up.
You know, in front of our booth, you can't see it. There's a bunch of tables where they have set out. So when they bring food out, people have a place to sit and talk and eat. And that's the part where you sit down and somebody say, is this chair taking? No, sit down. And you're there for an hour talking because now you found something in common, how your business works with theirs. And that's, to me, the value of this.
Agreed. I've never walked up to a table where there's a bunch of people and there's one seat where you weren't welcome to join. And they might all be together, one in company or a family business. But, you know, it's a family in itself. An industry can be fragmented or it can be together and as a family. And that's how I think the cleaning and restoration industries are. They're family. Everyone is in it together. You do meet some who are direct competitors with each other,
Right.
but I don't see any problem with that. I think everyone here agrees with that. There's plenty of work to go around. We can help each other and we can help the industry.
Absolutely. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with your magazine or get a copy, where would they go?
So the best, easiest way is go to issa.com/media. That will lead you to everything we do in media, our magazines, our webinars. We do video productions, have a program called Straight Talk, Take 5 with Clean Facts. So everything is in that portal, issa.com/media. Or if you want to go to CleanFacts, it's cleanfacts.com. That's the publication specifically for this industry. But all of our brands fit a place in every business when you think about all the things that we do in the cleaning industry.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you've been doing some interviews walking around here. I just saw you shooting an interview while I was watching you before you came over here to do your interview. So
We're all busy.
yes,
It's
we
good.
are.
It's good.
Yes, we are. I thank you, sir.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to seeing you at the next show.
All right. We'll see you there.
Take care.
I want to welcome everybody to today's episode, Fire More Than Flames and Smoke. And this is a multi-part series being offered by Normie.tv. It's also available on numerous other platforms, and you can find that at normie.org. I want to welcome today's guest, Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner, who is the Senior Director from ISSA, and he is also a senior leader in the GBAC organization, which is the Global Biorisk Advisory Council. Gavin, say hello.
Yeah, hi, Lance. How are you today?
Good. And if I missed on the actual titles, please correct me and fill us in a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, Lance, I work for ISSA, the Worldwide Cleaning Industry Association, and I manage the team with the Global Biorisk Advisory Council, which is a division of ISSA. I'm also an associate professor, Lance, at the Penn State College of Medicine. I've been working with Penn State since 2011. I teach 3 graduate courses, 3 15-week courses on biological risk management.
Well, that is exactly what we need to be talking about today. And with that, I want to bring up an image real quick. So I want to talk about short-term health effects for people exposed to the wildfires that have drifted down here into the U.S. and the central and the eastern coast. And these images I want to show you are what took place over a 3 to 4 day period. Now, this was, I can tell you, here in New Jersey, because I took the pictures myself, but this was mid-afternoon, and it looks like sunset. So give me a moment, and I'll bring this up on the screen so everybody can see what we're actually talking about, especially if you didn't get the opportunity to experience this. Are you able to see the images?
Yes, I can, Lance.
Well, as you can see, these are sunset looking type of images in the middle of the day with no clouds. Extremely thick smoke conditions. And this smoke was coming from probably up to 1,000 miles away up in Canada, all the way down to the coastal area of New Jersey. Now, from the reports and everything we got, it was even worse through the state of New York, Pennsylvania, which is closer to the Canadian border. So as far as health effects go, and I do want to mention one other thing. You've seen these images. I want to show you something graphical that we can then talk about. This was graphical data that I captured outside my home, actually, over a week period. You can see leading up to where the spiking started on the graph that the outside levels of particulates and volatile organic compounds, VOCs, or the chemistries in the air, are very low. And then you can see it all of a sudden started to spike on the first day, and then it was kind of an up and down to where it got really bad by the third day. And then after that, it started to settle out and move on. So the images that you saw before this is graphical data talking about particulates at 2.5 microns, 10 microns, and 1 or sub-micron size particulates, which really can affect people's health. So as far as short-term effects, how do you see that?
Well, what's really interesting, Lance, is that if you go back to that period of time, I think when I woke up on the Wednesday here in Washington, D.C., and your photos actually captured that very clearly, there was a lot of smoke in the air. And we knew the fires were in Canada. Who would have thought that I would wake up in Washington, D.C., and suddenly I realized the air that I breathe or am breathing today came from Canada? And you don't think where the at a local level, at the neighborhood level, where does the air come from that I breathe? We think it all is generated locally, but it wasn't. No, this air that I was breathing here in Washington, D.C. on that Wednesday was coming from Canada. Why? Because the smoke showed that to me. It visualized it. It showed me that the fires in Canada were sending smoke down the east coast of the US. And I think everyone needs to understand smoke anywhere is just bad for the human body. It also affects animals, no matter how healthy a person is or how long they're exposed to. Smoke exposure is just bad. And we need to understand, what does that bad mean? So if I look at, what were the messages going out from when the photos that you took, Lance, showing the sun blocked out, showing all that smoke in the air, what were the key messages being delivered to the public, the community? And we're very fortunate because, here's my phone. On my phone here, I have a number of apps. We have there's a lot of apps that are available that can make you aware of outdoor air quality. Not very many, I think very few people would have apps on their phone for indoor air quality, but we have a lot of apps for outdoor air quality. And on my phone, I use the weather app. It's free. And if I click on the weather app for Washington, D.C., I can see what the air quality is, and it's monitored, and it's called the Air Quality Index, or AQI. So again, the weather app has it. It's online. Many other apps use the Air Quality Index. And we know that the Air Quality Index around about 50 or less is considered healthy. We also know that sensitive and vulnerable people might notice ill effects to their health at levels as low as 51. And we know that from that air quality index, levels at 150 or greater are considered unhealthy for everyone. And so what we saw, this air quality index uses 6 different color schemes. But Lance, when I do my hazards identification, my risk assessments, I usually stick to the traffic light system, red, yellow, green, because that's universal. Everyone understands what red, yellow, green means. When you bring in other colors, it can be confusing. What is orange? What is purple? What is violet? That sort of thing. So there's 6 colors in the air quality index, and we started seeing maps on the news, on TV, on the websites, in newspapers, in the general media and social media. And a lot of people didn't understand what those 6 colors meant. But again, what we want to be really clear here, a level at 150 or above on the air quality index is considered unhealthy for everyone. And what we saw for the smoke from Canada, places like New York, Washington, D.C., other locations went up into the 300s, even the 400s. And this air quality index, Lance, only goes to 500. It stops at 500. So when we saw the numbers up into 400s, that's never happened before. That's setting new records for many of those locations.
I guess the way you could equate that is when we actually deal with indoor air quality and we get particulate counts and mold in the environment and extremely high, it's almost like breathing soup.
Yep.
It's that thick. And the particulate size of this smoke is extremely concerning because it goes deep into your lungs and it's a direct access point into your blood system.
This is really important, Lance. So if you look at, when you see smoke, like in the photos that you showed, we're concerned, and we saw this being talked about the hazards, the risks. It's about particles. And so smoke, even wildfire smoke, is harmful primarily because it contains airport particulate matter, these particles. And you saw on your graph that you showed, Lance, these particles can be measured in microns, 10 microns, 2.5 microns, 1 micron down to 0.3 microns. Understand that the smallest grain of sand is still 40 times larger than a PM 2.5, a particulate matter 2.5 particle. The width of a human hair is about 50 microns. So as soon as you get down to 10, we can't see those with the human eye until we see lots and lots of particles together. So when you see particles at 2.5, 10, like you showed in your graph, all coming together, that's what causes the smoke. That's what gives us the visualization. Now, we have wildfires, forest fires, grass fires have been around for years, for centuries, and we have a lot of data. If we go back to, say, the 2020 California fires that turned the sky just like in your photo, Lance, an apocalyptic shade of orange is what I would call. It was emitted by more than 1 million metric tons of PM 2.5. In California in 2020, in those fires, that was a 2,360% increase above normal air, according to the California Air Resources Board. And so it's really important to understand there are particles in the air. So if we focus on the short-term exposure to particulate matter, so let's focus on particulate matter 2.5, PM 2.5, which is we saw in the media. We saw everyone talking about PM 2.5. We know that short-term exposure can trigger lots of health problems, including but not limited to coughing, stinging eyes, a scratchy throat, a runny nose, chest pain, headaches, asthma attacks, fatigue, wheezing, breathing difficulties. And again, all this information is freely available through the US government on the US Center for Disease Control Prevention site, the CDC. But also, Lance, there's more serious impacts to the lungs and heart when you see particulate matter like PM 2.5 in the air. You can have reduction in lung function, even in really healthy people. And we know that the exposure to like the photos you showed can affect on heart health. So these particles can enter the bloodstream. They can trigger inflammation, leading to either heart attacks and stroke. They can worsen the health of people who have conditions like diabetes. And we also know from research that Harvard University has studies, and there's other studies out there that have shown that wildfire smoke increases the risk from infectious diseases. So that in one Harvard University study that I'm familiar with, it estimated that the PM 2.5, the particulate matter 2.5 emissions from the 2020 wildfires in the states of California, Oregon, and Washington state were associated with about a 12% increase in COVID cases and over an 8% increase in COVID deaths in 2020.
You know, you mentioned about all the particulate, the information being released to the public and stuff, and everybody's focusing on particulates. I spoke with, in one of the other episodes that we did, a gentleman who is works on the federal side of the firefighting wildfire teams. He's actually a consultant now with all the jets that are out there dropping water and flame retardant materials. But I asked him the difference in the types of smoke coming out of Canada and from wildfires. And he says there's two different types. One is the type burning the forest, just like a campfire. You're burning logs and vegetation, stuff like that. The second type is when that forest fire creeps into industrial and residential areas and starts burning homes and factories and all the materials and chemistries there, that changes the smoke and the contamination to not just particulate, but VOCs, volatile organic compounds, all the chemistries that are now airborne and being burned and converted to other things entering our lungs.
That's really important, Lance, because the messages that were being delivered about the fire, the wildfire smoke in the air just recently focused on particles. It didn't focus on chemicals. It didn't focus on volatile organic compounds. We didn't see them being measured or reported in real time. Yes, we know the measurements were taken, but again, that information wasn't made available. And I think it would have been much more responsible, because we saw the smoke in the air. You took the photos of the smoke in the air. It turned the sun orange. It turned the sky dark gray. And I saw it here in Washington, D.C., where I live. A few measurements to say, yes, we've got particles, but do we have other chemicals? I didn't see that data available. We know from studies, there's a good 2022 review in the Journal of Climate Change and Health. And the problem with these studies in these journals, that a lot of the community, a lot of just the public can't access these journals, because you've got to be a subscriber, you've got to pay money. So it's really important that we do think videos like this, Lance, to take those studies and sort of translate and synthesize the information so that everyone understands what's being done. And that's not done enough. But so if we go back to a 2020 review in the Journal of Climate Change and Health that probably most people haven't seen, they found that there were long-term effects of wildfire with PM 2.5 exposure. And those long-term effects included higher risks of respiratory disease, but also cancer. And so it's really interesting that we now look at, okay, so again, the air where I am now in Washington, D.C., Lance, today is pretty clear. I don't know what the measurements are. I haven't measured it, but I don't see any smoke in the air. And what we've seen from, wildfires in Canada, Australia, California, we've seen the week after that smoke, like in your photos, we've seen an increase in emergency room visits. We've seen an increase in people visiting the physician or the doctor. We've seen an increase in prescription of medications for, say, respiratory complications or respiratory problems, difficulties. And we've also seen studies, Lance, say, I think through the, what was one study that I know of through the California Air Resources Board, they estimated that PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5 from all sources, is responsible for 5,400 premature deaths and 2,800 hospitalizations for cardiovascular, heart and respiratory diseases in California every year. And they also, in the same studies reports, said that PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5, was also associated with 6,700 asthma-related hospital emergency room visits in California every year. So it's going to be really interesting. A week after what your photos show, the week after the smoke coming from Canada, how many visits were made by people, we haven't got that data yet, to emergency rooms, how many people went to see the physician or the doctor, and what was the number of prescriptions and medications given to people that are now reporting with maybe breathing difficulties and asthma and other problems.
It's interesting because we recently also did an episode on sensitized individuals with Michael Pinto, and he talks about a lot of that. But the question I have for you is, we've talked about short-term effects, and I think we're starting to teeter on, now that we're a week and a half plus out, what are the long-term effects? But before we get to that specific question, what's the difference of the group that we're not talking about with babies, children, pregnant women, and we can't forget the group of the elderly?
Oh, yeah. So the elderly will have a lot of underlying conditions, that again make them prone to particulate matter PM 2.5 and less particles, smaller particles, which do exist in smoke in general. But if you focus on that real critical, you've identified that critical cohort, that critical group, Lance, of pregnant people, babies, young children, they really need to avoid smoke exposure as much as possible. And so it's really important that we get those warnings out in time. A lot of us will stay indoors, recirculate, or some of us don't, but we need to ensure that our air conditioning is recirculating and not bringing in that outdoor air, because a lot of the filters that we have will not pull out the particles in our home or even places where we work. So it's really important to understand babies, young kids are at high risk because their bodies aren't fully developed. And if you look at pregnant people, their bodies have been fully developed, but when they're pregnant, you're in overdrive. This really has a big effect on your immune system. So there are studies that have shown us that wildfire smoke exposure can lead to preterm birth. So that's preterm birth, Lance, is birth before 37 weeks of gestation. It also leads to babies with low birth weight, leads to babies with impaired lung functions and other health risks. And there was a study, in 2022 in the Journal of Environmental Research. Again, many people probably haven't seen this one, but in this environmental research study, it looked at birth outcomes in California between 2006 and 2012. And what they found was each additional day of exposure to wildfire smoke during pregnancy, so people that are pregnant, increase the risk of preterm birth. That's preterm birth. That's less than what